Many thanks for staying tuned. It's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. And on the program this morning, we'll be taking a look at the 50% tariff increment for telco operators in Nigeria as approved by the NCC. And of course, following this price adjustment, NATCOMS as promised or as decided to drag the federal government and the NCC to court if this is not reversed. We have joining us via Zoom audio this morning the president of NATCOMS, Mr. Adiolu. But before we cross over to him this morning, let's quickly listen to the Minister for Communications and Digital Economy, Bosun Tijani, on the approval granted the telco operators by the NCC.
The hike is also based on inflation globally. This is a sector that has not increased price for a long time. In fact, what government has been doing is managing the situation. The companies have been crying out for a long time that they're struggling. The cost of diesel, you can imagine how much they bought diesel last year and how much it's going for this year. And this is not a problem that is unique to Nigeria. But what we've done with them is saying that telecommunication services are now extremely important to our people. So it's not something you can just increase price haphazardly. But also, how do we support them to ensure that these companies continue to stay sustainable? This is a sector that employs about 15,000 people directly, the employees of these MNOs. But also indirectly, I think there's about 500,000 people working in the sector, whether those that are selling recharge cards or any of those services. We have to make sure that the sector continues to stay sustainable. But at the same time, we don't want to inflict pain on Nigerians. So they were claiming for 100% increase in tariff. I think as you can see from what NCC released yesterday, we had a lot of back and forth. They've been talking about since even before we were appointed. The first time I met them almost 16, 17 months ago, it was the same thing they were talking about. But now I think we've set it at about 50% to ensure that they can find ways to stay sustainable, but also the price hike is not significant to the point where it becomes painful for our people.
Right, that was the communications minister speaking on why the NCC gave that approval to the telco operators. Mr. Adiolu Ogunbanjo, good morning. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Let's take your opinion. When this news filtered in that the NCC had given approval to telco operators 50% tariff increment, NATCOMS is kicking against this approval. Why is that? Hello, Mr. Ogunbanjo. Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so did you hear the question?
Hello?
Okay, yes, you're with us. Did you hear the question?
Please, can you repeat the question?
All right, so I said when you heard the news that NCC had given 50% approval to the telco operators, NATCOMS is kicking against this approval. Why is that?
Well, I must say that a 50% rise is too much for subscribers, Nigerian subscribers to bear. Okay. Don't forget that the operators had earlier asked for a 100% increase.
Right.
As people who want to make profit, they may even ask for 500%. But that does not now mean that NCC should now grant them half of what they have demanded. I must say that, yes, operational costs like they are claiming is high, agreed. Cost of diesel.
We seem to be having a little bit of connection with Mr.
Dollarization of the economy.
The use of our data is something like, it's something like, it costs so much, let me put it that way. So that is what they are saying justifies the cost of, the increase. But NATCOMS is saying a 10% increase will just be fine. And if that is not enough, I do know that the banks are owing the telecom operators because all their services, their USSD, their teller machines and all that, still, they're owing them. So let them pay. again, the telecom companies are also owing themselves. That is, Telecoms A is owing Telecoms B. Let them pay up among themselves. They call it interconnect rates. So let them pay up, among themselves. The banks, let them also pay up. And then the 10% increase. All this, if that is still not enough, then let them go to the stock market. Let them go to the capital market. Let them do initial public offers, raise funds so that they can now use all these funds to ensure that they improve quality of service.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Ogunbanjo, there is no doubt about it. I know that you are fighting for the interest of every Nigerian subscriber. But the question I would like to ask you is this. Were you part of that engagement by the NCC and your 10% increment of tariff that you just mentioned now? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Can you still, are you with us? Can you hear?
Hello?
Can you hear the studio? We can hear you clearly. All right, we'll probably need to
I love what is happening this morning. Because the problem that we are facing now is because of the network. And this is one of the reasons why, the increment of tariff was granted by NCC.
Perhaps we can just try to reconnect connection with him. Let's see if we can end this and then reconnect with you. Perhaps the service will be better. But while we do that, maybe we also take another listen to the Honorable Minister. And when we return, hopefully the connection will be better and we can continue this conversation with Mr. Ogunbanjo.
Also based on inflation globally. This is a sector that has not increased price for a long time. In fact, what government has been doing is managing the situation. The companies have been crying out for a long time that they're struggling. The cost of diesel, you can imagine how much they bought diesel last year and how much it's going for this year. And this is not a problem that is unique to Nigeria. But what we've done with them is saying that telecommunication services are now extremely important to our people. So it's not something you can just increase price haphazardly. But also, how do we support them to ensure that these companies continue to stay sustainable? This is a sector that employs about 15,000 people directly, the employees of these MNOs. But also indirectly, I think there's about 500,000 people working in the sector, whether those that are selling recharge cards or any of those services. We have to make sure that the sector continues to stay sustainable. But at the same time, we don't want to inflict pain on Nigerians. So they were claiming for 100% increase in tariff. I think as you can see from what NCC released yesterday, we had a lot of back and forth. They've been talking about since even before we were appointed. The first time I met them almost 16, 17 months ago, it was the same thing they were talking about. But now I think we've set it at about 50% to ensure that they can find ways to stay sustainable, but also the price hike is not significant.
All right, that was again the minister. We have Mr. Ogunbanjo back with us online here, and Jibola asked him a question earlier on, so he would respond to that question. Mr. Ogunbanjo, can you still hear us?
Yes, I can hear.
All right, so you can go ahead with the response.
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, because inflation, as given by Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, is saying 38.1%, does that mean that everything should now be 38-point-something%? Besides, what about the 50% increase? Does that measure up to this inflationary trend? And besides, if every service have to be, hiked by the rate of inflation, I mean, then we can't afford any service. So what we are saying is a 50% increase is rather much, and let organizations that are owing them pay up so that they can also have money and funds to, improve quality of service for subscribers. Beyond that, we are saying the 10% increase is fine. What are we looking at? They are saying, for instance, cost of SMS is 6 naira by the new rate. Sorry?
Go ahead. Just corroborating what you said.
Right. So cost of SMS will be 6 naira, and then we are saying, sorry, a 10% increase is 4 naira 40 kobo. So, and the average Nigerian call, again, they are saying, I think, from
16 naira, from 11.
Yes, from 11 to 16 or something.
Yeah.
Right. So for that, it's every Nigerian will call minimum of 3 minutes, and that is per call. We make several calls a day. Look at data. I, for instance, use a minimum of 20 gigabytes monthly. In fact, it's not even enough. Now I have to now look at 30 gigabytes, the costs, you know, and it will impact on people's businesses. The average POS operator there will now start to increase charges. The impact will be too much on the economy and the subscribers. So I must say that the 10% increase is just right for now.
Okay. I'm sorry, Abimbola, but you didn't answer the other side of my question.
How did they arrive at their own 10%?
Were you part of the stakeholders' engagement before now?
Oh, on January 9, yes, there was a stakeholders engagement. And what was done at that meeting was every stakeholder, everybody, you know, all stakeholders were invited, and we all stated our cases, but no decision was reached. No decision was reached.
Right, so you were part of the meeting, and so you left the meeting without agreeing on the way forward. So for you, that news probably came in as shocking because stakeholders had not agreed to.
It is, particularly on
Go ahead.
On Monday. It was very shocking to me when, you know, they now finally told us that 50% increase was granted.
Okay.
You know, there are options, which I've stated earlier.
Right. Before we go over those options again, Mr. Ogunbanjo, let me quickly ask you this. The last time there was a review was in 2013. And so the NCC is also saying that, I mean, it's taken quite a long time, stability for the NCC and the operators to look at a price increment. And of course, now is the time, because of all the issues that the telco operators have also listed, that you also agreed with. And so if you look at you know, the facts, look at the facts that at the moment you also did mention inflation as a major problem driving the economy at the moment. Yes. Of course, we know that the telcos are also business, and they are in operation for businesses. So would you say that all of those options that you listed earlier, would you say they should remain in business and not for profit making? Or all those options that you mentioned earlier, if they went through those routes, would they still be breaking even?
Oh, of course. They've always made profits. They will always be making profits. And besides, whatever it is, the 10% increase is also in trillions. Yes, I learned that they are owing about 1.5 trillion. But by the time the banks, by the time the bank now pay whatever they are owing, and they pay their interconnect rates among themselves, you know, and then with the 10% increase, you know, all that put together, if that is not enough, then let them go and raise funds at the capital market. Right. Let them do IPOs. Yes, so that they now have funds to pour back into the business. I mean, and Nigerians really want to be part of their business. I know MTN has
listed on,
but all the same. Sorry. Right. You said.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to ask you my next question, which is I would like to know if NatComs is open to any form of dialogue or any stakeholder engagement before deciding to take the federal government to court.
Oh, definitely. Today, by tomorrow and Friday, we'll be engaging the NCC. Definitely. It's only when talks break down and they say they are not reversing at all,
Oh, wow.
Sorry
then
about that.
next week, next week, then we may now have to seek legal redress in the court of law.
All right, let's quickly wrap this up so that we can also give you a breather there. Although you have said you will continue to engage the NCC, the NCC has also
Definitely.
said they will continue to engage with stakeholders to create a telecommunications environment that works for everyone, one that protects consumers, support operators, and sustain the ecosystem that drives connectivity across the nation. So in terms of connectivity across the nation, in terms of improvement of interconnectivity amongst all the telecom operators, what are your thoughts? What should NCC consolidate on, even in the interest of subscribers who are again saying that hopefully this may further be reviewed from 50%?
Thank you very much. NCC should, as a matter of urgency, ensure that they contact the bankers committee so that the banks pay up whatever they are owing telecom. I mean, they deduct from us as you are doing any transaction. So it's with them. So why are the banks not paying them, stifling their growth? I mean, this is bad. Again, why must they also owe each other? Pay up, and then, I mean, they will have a healthy business environment, and they will have funds to also inject into the business for improved quality of service. Beyond that, the 10% increase is fine, and put all that together. If that is also not enough, like I said earlier, I mean, then go and to the capital market,
Okay.
so that Nigerians can key into the business, and then they have more funds.
All right.
That's what we are saying.
Okay, we'll have to leave this conversation here this morning. Thank you so much, President NatComs, Mr. Adeolu Ogunbanjo, for joining us via Zoom this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure having me.
Right. Okay, we've been speaking with Mr. Adeolu Ogunbanjo, President of NatComs. Jibola, again, before we take a break, from what he said, and I particularly like the fact that he agreed that, they were at that stakeholders meeting just before, that announcement was made. But what does that say to you if at a stakeholders meeting, some of the stakeholders did not agree to an increment up to 50%, and then you've come out to say, well, we will not approve 100% for the telcos, we'll go ahead to do 50%. Does that look like a breach?
It's a breach, actually, and I really do not know whose interest the NCC is serving. Is NCC serving the interest of the telecom operators or the interest of Nigerians? These are major stakeholders, NatComs and others who were present at that stakeholders engagement. And there was no agreement as to a particular figure, and all of a sudden, we all woke up on Monday, and voila, 50% increment in tariff of telecoms is here. But what I would like to say here is NatCom should open its windows more for engagement before taking the federal government to court. Like you rightly said, while you were asking him certain questions, the telecom operators, they are in business to make money. And the level of inflation in the country is quite high. These people are not Father Christmas, and so they are not expected to do their business at a loss. So there's inflation, there's problem of power. Generally, operating in Nigeria is quite difficult for these people. So calling for an increment in their tariff is not a crime, but the percentage is what is the bone of contention now.
Yes, and like you said, the problem really for NatComs is not an increment, it is just the percentage. So there might just be a need for them all to go back to a table and then find if they can actually meet point. But it's going to be pretty difficult here because now, as much as, the subscribers, the subscribers are complaining that, we can't afford to pay more. But you also need to also look at the telecom operators themselves. They also have members of staff. They also have people that they pay salaries to. They also have, they pay their dues to NCC. There are other things that they also do. So, you know.
And they do a lot of imports. And they pay to the federal government.
Because again, not everything that they use are produced here. So it's really dicey in this particular issue. So, but here is where dialogue would really come to play.
Sure.
And this is where NCC, though NCC is the regulator, but they also need to engage more because it will take more time. And you know how things are. NATCOMs mad sue the government. It is not as if the case will come up. The case might not come
take
up.
years.
But at the end of the day, we'll continue to pay that money because it will take effect. And so rather than, you know, continue to go back and forth, lawsuits, law cases, because again, NATCOMs will be spending money to take government to court. Where is that money really coming from? So it's going to be a topsy-turvy situation here. Will the NCC further engage, you know, the stakeholders to, you know, drive the figures down? Again, it probably will be a tough mountain to climb, but there's nothing really impossible when it comes to things like this. But again, we know that once things climb up in Nigeria,
does it come down?
It is usually very difficult for them to come down. So at the moment, it looks like we'll still deal with a 50% increment until something is done.
I just hope the NCC and the major stakeholders in the telecom sector will be able to find a meeting point at the end of the day so that it will be a win-win situation for both the operators and the subscribers. But then, what I would expect NCC to do at this point in time, and of course NATCOM, is to pin it down on these operators that your service must improve. Right,
it must improve. And, you know, again, NCC is the regulator. NATCOMs, yes, they can, but I think this is one of the major thing that NCC needs to hold the telecom operators by the jugular with. So we've approved that you can do 50%, but if your services don't improve, then we can either fine you, or I think it's part of their responsibility to also revoke licenses. So you need to also play by the rules. You cannot continue to collect money from Nigerians and your downtime. We cannot continue to deal with all those downtimes. And like I said the other day that we talked about this issue, if the connection is bad, don't let it count. Let us hear Kowole and we will deal with the fact that, yes, we're not connecting. But a situation where you're placing a call, it is not connected. Your seconds are counting, but it is not connected. And this is going to spiral. The telecom operators are increasing. The POS operators too, we say banks will charge them more for whatever. So it will go from one end to the other. And at the end of the day, we would have no choice. But I know that for a fact, video call has helped a lot of families. Yeah. It has helped a lot of traveling up and down. So data calls will improve, but again, it has saved a lot of transportation fare. We will deal with it one way or the other, but it will be nice if the NCC can also still find a way to further reduce the percentage. How that will be done, we do not know. Is what we don't know. And, you know, like it or not, I was watching a particular program over the weekend, and there was a particular guest who was on a show, and the guy did say that we are in a season of taxation. You know, the man who is in charge of the country, he loves to tax. Okay, so your taxes will work. But when you don't have money to pay tax, uncle. And hardly can we do without this thing. Hardly. It has now become so endemic. Let's see how this will work at the end of the day. The NCC still has a whole lot of work to do here. And I think especially at engaging stakeholders in the telecoms industry, it is not just about the telcos. The end users are also very important here. Thank you for watching this side of the table this morning. We'll take a quick break. When we return, the Lagos conversation will be up.